So happiness seems to be this fleeting thing, this thing floating in the air that we're all searching for, craving, grasping for. You know, we're always continuously doing things that we think will fulfill us and make us happy, just chasing after experiences, foods, people, situations, those feel-good things. Our happiness, so long as it relies on external circumstances, so long as it relies on other people's situations, it will always be fleeting. Life isn't always going to go according to plan. There are going to be things that hurt you, and we need to learn to experience discomfort, to experience sadness, anger, desperation, and to be at peace with it. Not that I would wish horrible things on anyone. Learn to talk about, our hardships. We must learn to feel them, to experience them, to acknowledge them, and thus move through them. Because so long as we suppress them and reject them and ignore them, we're creating like these blockages in ourselves, like blocking ourselves to experiencing the fullness of life. But also, until we fully express these things, we don't release them. They don't flow through and allow us to move on to other things. If we want to move on to other things and move forward in life, we have to experience everything. Experience the sadness and the happiness, the anger and the joy. We must. Happiness is learning to feel all emotions. It's learning to be at peace with all emotions. It's learning to welcome all parts of yourself. Because ultimately, that's what suffering is. It's the rejection of reality, and ultimately the rejection of yourself. The rejection of your own feelings, of who you are, of your truth. Your truth is 100% valid, and you've got to acknowledge that. And embrace it. Embrace yourself, love yourself, show yourself love and caring, tenderness in these times of desperation and need. Because suffering is the rejection of what is actually happening. When we learn to actually allow ourselves to experience negative emotions, allow ourselves to feel the pain and the sorrow, it's not as bad as it would be if we were resisting it and rejecting it. And also the thing with this, sadness and anguish is, there's feeling them, these things, and there's thinking about them. Often feeling them is one thing, but then it's our thoughts. We start, the thoughts that perpetuate themselves. We start thinking about our pain and our suffering and telling ourselves how bad it is and reinforcing it. And catastrophizing about how terrible the future is going to be, how terrible this or that is going to be. So it's often our ideas and thoughts that we have surrounding the feelings that make it all so much worse. And again, that's taking us out of really feeling, embodying what is going on for us. Thoughts about it, the resistance to it, all makes it so much worse, so much more painful. Creates more suffering. In these moments, we can't stop ourselves from feeling what we feel. And if we do, we just start numbing ourselves to life, from both the good and the bad. These are just labels we've put on things. We've decided that happiness is good, sadness is bad. But those are decisions we've made. It's really hard when you're in it, We have these habitual patterns of how we react in life, how we cope with life, how we think, how we react. And so that's why we have practices like meditation, mindfulness, that helps us to learn to be at peace with life, at peace with what is, at peace with who we are. It also helps develop self-awareness and many other things. But that's what we practice in the good times. Because we start to developing those pathways in our brain, we start developing those habits. We practice them, especially in the good times, because it's easier in the good times. And then once shit goes down, when we're in those terrible places, it'll be much easier to access them if we've been practicing when things are going well. So we practice. And it's strange because, the benefits aren't always obvious immediately. Sometimes they are, and there are a few, you know, you have a little more clarity, general feel good, general calmness. But the real benefits come when shit hits the fan, you know? When things go down, you realize I actually managed to cope with that better, much better than I did previously. And so we practice and we practice and we practice. It doesn't have to be for hours on end every day. It could be just 10 minutes every day, or maybe it's 15 or half an hour. But it's taking responsibility for our well-being. And we must, you know. Mental health is a serious issue. It's becoming more and more serious these days with the pace of life, with the amount of information we're taking in every day, with anxiety. So anxiety, depression, stress, the main ones, because they're very real for most of us, all of us. The vast majority of us experience one or all three of those things at some point in our lives. And it's very easy to learn to cope with them, to deal with them. All we have to do is decide to do it and follow the practices, find a teacher, get someone to show you the way, and we learn, so that then when we are in the dark times we can better support ourselves. That is the thing, you know, coming to prevention rather than prescription before it's too late to fix things. Why don't you just prevent them in the first place and save yourself the trouble?